And that is the Prime Minister and his new front bench team, his new cabinet, his new ministry and his outer ministry. It was a long affair this morning with the new government. This is always the case. Either his cabinet ministers or ministers taking the oath or affirmation of office, and children featuring in this ceremony this morning as well. Jim Chalmers' littlest one giving the new treasurer a big hug there. And as I noted before, it's lovely to see that a lot of these new appointments to the front bench are mums and dads, but they are relatively new mums and dads with very small children indeed, so setting an example for the rest of the country. What happens now? The family photos. This is a big day in the political careers of all the people in that room. Their families are there. They obviously get a photo to remember the day, and then there is a photo of the entire team. There is the Governor-General who has sworn these ministers in this morning. Trudy McIntosh is outside Government House. She's been watching along with you and I this morning. She joins me now. Trudy, as a journalist, hearing minister after minister and cabinet minister after cabinet minister essentially promise never to leak from cabinet. It's a little bit disappointing as a journalist because that's where the best stories can come from. But on a more serious note, this is a really big day for Anthony Albanese and for his new team.
It certainly is, Laura. When you listen through and watch the dozens and dozens of new Labor ministers being sworn in here at Government House, there is a real sense of continuity, but also change with this new Labor government. Continuity in the fact that 12 of the ministers that have just been signed in are sworn in there were actually served as cabinet ministers under the Rudd-Gillard government. But we've also seen so many new faces there, young women in particular being promoted into the outer ministry ranks. Think about Annika Wells. It's just her start of her second term, the member for Lilly. Also people like Christy McBain. She rose to prominence in the Black Summer bushfires as the mayor down there on the New South Wales South Coast, and now has been elevated in her second term as well, Laura, to the outer ministry.
Yeah, we're just seeing the first of these family photos, Trudy. Michelle Rowland is getting in place there, Penny Wong. These are two women in particular who have been big features of the shadow cabinet as well. So a lot of experience, some great appointments, but also some new faces, and essentially bright people being given a chance in a new government to prove themselves. You see there Amanda Rishworth, she's been elevated to social services. Linda Burney is the Minister for Indigenous Affairs. Tanya Plibersek, she's certainly someone who has been around 2 decades and brings a wealth of experience. Questions over why she's been shifted from the education and women portfolio to environment and water. A lot of colour. Sometimes we see these swearing-in ceremonies, Trudy, and it's a lot of men in blue suits, but we bring women and we bring a lot of colour to this family photo today, on a more frivolous point, of course. But big smiles there. As you say, Trudy, a mix of old or experienced and new.
And you get, Laura, with these family photos, as is tradition, as we see the swearings in of both sides of politics when they are in government, you get a different variation of each of these photos. They start off with the entire ministerial family, if I can put it like that, and we're going to slowly see over the next few minutes them whittle this down, different combinations, the females within cabinet, the senior members of the team, the outer ministry, the inner ministry. It's really interesting to see as this family photo gets underway. I would have to note it's really freezing here. To be lower than zero, the apparent temperature. Not a lot of people wearing big coats there, so they're braving the weather for these photos. It's evergreen, this photo. They get used all year round, so people choosing their best outfit for today.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about some of those appointments. I mean, the obvious ones we know. Richard Marles as the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Defence. Penny Wong as Foreign Affairs Minister. Jim Chalmers as Treasurer. Katie Gallagher stays as Finance Minister. She's also the Minister for the Public public service and for women. Interesting, this appointment, a good one too. Senator Don Farrell, he is a factional player, certainly a factional boss. He's Minister for Trade and Tourism and Special Minister for State. Tony Burke has been someone really pushing this wages case in opposition. He stays as the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations, and a personal passion of him, for him, the arts. Mark Butler retains health and aged care. I'm told that he is someone who really wanted both of those portfolios. I've argued this morning that there is a good case for aged care to have its own standalone portfolio, given this was such a big part of the election strategy for Labor, and we know how much change needs to come into place there. Michelle Rowland, who you can see on camera right now, she was with us just a week ago when that tiny cabinet was sworn in so that Anthony Albanese could go to Tokyo. And she really conveyed what an emotional time it was for so many within Labor who have spent a decade in opposition, and it is hard, dirty work being in opposition. As Peter Dutton said to me yesterday, Trudy, no one of sound mind wants to be opposition leader and in opposition. The goal is to always get to being Prime Minister and in government. We can also see here Bill Shorten. Of course, he retains his portfolio of the NDIS, and this is something he told me just a couple of days ago he is passionate about. Also wanted to mention Clare O'Neill, who was in white, that just walked out of picture there. She did such a great job in opposition in the aged care portfolio. She was great at prosecuting the argument. She's a really good communicator, and she has now been elevated into the position of Home Affairs and Cybersecurity. That is going to be one of the more crucial portfolios for this next term of government, but I think she has proven herself to be worthy of that portfolio and will do a great job.
It's a big promotion, as you say, for Clare O'Neill. What we've been looking at here on your screen is state by state, the delegation of Labor ministers. This is the WA delegation. They've got to be pretty happy with the big swing they got over there in the West. It is in part to those big swings and picking up some of those seats that you do see the fact that there is a Labor majority. This is now the South Australian delegation. You can see very senior members within Anthony Albanese's ministerial team are from South Australia. Penny Wong, the Foreign Minister. You've got Mark Butler there on the right, who's the Health and Aged Care Minister. Don Farrell, remember, he stood aside for Christina Keneally in that Deputy Senate Leader position when she was in the Senate. He's got that job back, and as a result, he also was able to pick his own portfolios, Laura. Yeah,
look, Ed Husic is someone who has always been talked about as someone with great talent. He's also a Western Sydney MP. He's someone that was absolutely deserving of an elevation in this new ministry. Also, something to note, as all these ministers were sworn in with an oath or an affirmation of office, if you take an oath, most people here were putting their hand on a Bible. Of course, Ed Husic, being a Muslim MP, did take that oath of office on the Quran, which is just a nice point to make this morning, I think, pointing out the difference in the makeup of this cabinet.
Diversity, Laura, and reflecting the Australian society. That has long been a criticism of the Parliament and the Ministry, that it doesn't represent the diversity that's on display in the Australian community. And within this new Labor Ministry, you can see that in Ed Husic and also in Anne Ali and Linda Burney being sworn into this ministry as well. Linda Burney, the first Indigenous woman to take a senior cabinet position. She was a minister in the Labor state government in New South Wales. But yeah, it's good to see diversity on display here.
And this is the family photo for the women in the ministry there, and I don't think we've quite seen a photo like that before with Anthony Albanese. A record number of women into cabinet, into the outer ministry as well. Lots of smiling faces there. In the makeup of a cabinet and ministry, Trudy, you also have to talk about the importance of, we don't talk about quotas so much, but for a Prime Minister and a frontbench team, they really need to balance a number of things. It's not just gender and diversity. It's state representation, it's the cities and the bush.
And factions, Laura, as well. This is the thing within Labor.
Forgot the most important one, Trudy, yes.
To him. Yeah, don't forget about the others. It's the factions that ultimately decide who gets put forward. But Anthony Albanese behind the scenes is able to have a say, because if the faction put up, 10 blokes and no women, it wasn't going to fly. So there has to be a consideration on a lot of different fronts in terms of different portfolios and making sure that you've got the right people in the right jobs. This looks like the New South Wales right. A lot of these members are from the right faction here, alongside Anthony Albanese, Chris Bowen, Ed Husic. I spoke to him yesterday. He was hopeful to get industry, Laura, but they can't get too presumptuous before they hear from the leader. But I imagine he is very happy that did come true, to be the industry minister now representing the Labor government. It's
interesting to note the additions as well. Matt Thistlethwaite is one of his portfolios is, a minister for the Republic. That's not something that they've flagged that they want to push straight away, but it certainly has been on Labor's agenda for quite some time. Something that's also been noted to me is that the trade tourism portfolio, which Don Farrell now holds, they've dropped investment from that title. I'm not sure what that means. So what happens after today, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we have the titles. We know who's getting these ministries and cabinet spots, but we just don't know about the division of Labor, if you like. So the difference between the climate change portfolio and environment, what overlaps and what is, just for Tanya Plibersek and just for Chris Bowen.
As you can see, Laura, the Governor-General just going past where I am here. As you say, though, the divisions of the portfolios is going to be crucial. And as for the departments, a lot of people in this town work in the public service, and there's a continual message you hear from them. We're sick of what's called being mogged, which is when parts of departments get moved between one another. One example of that is the Department of Agriculture and Water. Under the previous coalition government, they had water. Now that's going to be stripped out, given that water has been put back with the environment. So those kind of changes, just changing stationery and all sorts of things like that, actually cost millions and millions of taxpayer dollars to make these sort of changes within government.
Yeah, it certainly does. Trudy, thanks so much for your time this morning.